Hello. This Bible study was given over Pell Talk on March 8th, Saturday, 2003, by Mr. Zen E.
Well, we're here for the Saturday evening Pell Talk session, and last time we discussed the passage in John 11, and that was a very challenging study, and I'm sure that we did not see all the pictures there. But we are somewhat done with our study on the concept of speedily and quickly also. Tonight we're going to look at a passage in Isaiah 42 and see what God may have to teach us through that passage. But it's quite a pertinent passage in the sense that it really speaks to our time, although it really has been applicable throughout time, ever since the inception of the corporate visible assembly of those that have the Word of God. But Isaiah 42, we're going to get right into this because we have a lot of ground to cover, and Lord willing, we will do so. Isaiah 42. Verse 22. But this is a people robbed and spoiled. Now, who are we talking about? If you turn to the beginning of this great book of prophecy, Isaiah 1, we read the following: the vision of Isaiah the son of Amoz, which he saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem. But so we begin with Judah and Jerusalem, but if you go through the book, you will see that it also concerns, of course, Israel. And sometimes we use the term Israel comprehensively to refer both to all the nation of Israel, period. But sometimes we have to make the distinction, as God does, Israel being the 10 tribes to the north and Judah being the 2 tribes to the south. But if you go to Isaiah 28, the whole chapter is on Ephraim, and that, of course, concerns Israel. Ephraim is another name that God uses for Israel. So if you turn there for a moment, Isaiah 28, we read there the following: Woe to the crown of pride, to the drunkards of Ephraim, whose glorious beauty is a fading flower, which are on the head of the fat valleys of them that are overcome with wine. And in verse 3, the crown of pride, the drunkards of Ephraim, shall be trodden under foot. So there even God is warning of the coming judgment. And then he goes on right in verse 14, and switches and talks about Jerusalem. And chapter 29 is Ariel, and that's actually another name for Jerusalem. It's just like Ephraim is another name for Israel, and so forth. And so you see this whole book of Isaiah, it does speak to Jerusalem, but it really also covers Israel, and actually we can look at the whole book as speaking to the whole corporate body. Now, that understanding makes it somewhat easier to understand, although we have to make the distinction, because Hezekiah comes into play and his dealings with the Sennacherib, the king of Assyria, and the future judgment on Jerusalem through Babylon is also mentioned, and so there are those distinctions. Now, so here in coming back to verse 22 of Isaiah 42, we read, But this is a people robbed and spoiled. They are all of them snared in holes, and they are hid in prison houses. They are for a prey, and none delivereth, for a spoil, and none saith, Restore. If you skip to verse 24, notice the same similar language. Who gave Jacob for a spoil? By the way, this is a question. Who gave Jacob for a spoil? and Israel to the robbers. Now, we read in verse 22 that this is a people robbed and spoiled. Here in verse 24, who gave Jacob for a spoil and Israel to the robbers? Now, you have, by now you may know this because we've been talking about these, the way God speaks in the Bible, more and more. But God actually not only says that Israel is the victim of being robbed, but Israel is also the robber. This happens all the time in the Bible, especially in regards to the corporate body. They are the ones that devour the true believers. At the same time, they are the ones that are devoured by, in the Old Testament, Assyria and Babylon, and of course in the New, by Satan, you see. So that if you keep that in mind, it's also easier to learn. So here, this is a people robbed and spoiled. Oh, by the way, the reason for this is, remember the principle in the Bible, that as you have done, so shall it be done to you. This is a divine principle that God has set up. And so as they have done, so to the true believers, so too God brings a fierce nation, a nation of fierce countenance from the north, and does and recompenses them. He recompenses the true believers' blood on Israel. You see, and that's why if they are robbers, then if they have robbed, that is, spiritually, then Israel, will be robbed. This is how God is recompensing them. Okay, so that's the reason. And so, if you turn now to Jeremiah 2, there is this confirmation that God refers to Israel as robbers. Verse 26 of Jeremiah 2, we read, "As the thief is ashamed when he is found, so is the house of Israel ashamed. They, their kings, their princes, and their priests, and their prophets." Notice again, as the thief is ashamed when he is found, so is the house of Israel ashamed. Do you also remember that God says that my house shall be called a house of prayer, but you have made it a den of thieves. Den of thieves. But they themselves are also, there's theft committed against them by the instruments of judgment upon them, as God brings these instruments of judgment. So,